There are 3 things every podcast must nail to have a successful outro. In this episode, we're going to dive into that and much more. Let's do it. Hey there, Craig Hewitt here from Castos. Welcome back to the channel. In this video, we're going to walk through the 3 elements that create a perfect outro for every episode of your podcast. If you come from any kind of a marketing background, you'll know that call to action is the term that we use for the thing that we want folks who are engaged with our content to do next. So you might have heard on a lot of podcasts, it might be like, hey, leave a review on Apple Podcasts. Lame. Go to our website. Kind of lame, but ultimately like what you want people to do. But really, there's no single right answer for this, right? It is the thing that you want people who are engaged with your content to do next, to take that next step in the journey and build that relationship with you, right? That's all we're talking about. Podcasting is a storytelling medium so people can get to know, like, and trust you so that they can take that next step with you in your relationship. It's just like dating, right? Podcasting is just like dating. You get attention from people, usually via social media or word of mouth. They engage with you and your content via your podcast, right? And it's 20, 30, 40, 60, 90 minutes of you talking about a topic every episode, every week. And in that, they get to know a ton about you and who you are and what you believe. And then, and this is the most important part, the outro is the opportunity for you to say, hey, listener, if you like what we're talking about, the next step in our journey is this. In my opinion, there's 3 things that are really important in nailing that outro. And the first is it's concise, right? A podcast episode has to have a concise ending so that listeners know what to do next. Because otherwise, what are they going to do? They're going to grab their phone and they're going to flip to the next podcast in their podcasting app. They're going to forget about you for the time being, and they're going to go do something else. But if you have a really concise, clear, actionable outro, they very well may swipe over, see the show notes, click on the link you have there. Okay, so that's the first one, is your podcast outro should be concise and it should be very clear to the listener what you want them to do next. And the second one, and I hinted at it already, is it should be in the show notes. And it should be at the top of the show notes, because what do? You're listening to a podcast, someone says something, you're like, I don't want to go Google this thing or find this link on your website. I want to swipe to the right and click this link and go do whatever the host asked me to do. And so as a host and as a content creator, you want to make it as easy as possible for someone to take the next step of the journey with you. And that might be sign up for my email list or join my newsletter, or how about, hey, join next week's webinar, or go check me out on YouTube, or whatever it is. You want to make it easy. And the easiest way to do it is put it at the very top of the show notes, right? Join my newsletter, link. Just makes it easy. Someone swipes, clicks the links, drops in their email, and you have achieved the thing you want with letting that person take the next step in the relationship with you in that way. Okay, so we've got concise and we've got easy. And the third one should be alignment. You want your call to action to be aligned with your business objectives. Okay, so we'll take a step back and you say, Craig, I'm not a brand. I'm not a company. This is just me and my hobby, and I'm talking about the Green Bay Packers or my favorite anime character or something like that. It's cool. Consider it a brand, right? What is the thing that you want podcast listeners to do to take that next step in the journey with you? We've mentioned a couple. I'll just list off kind of a dozen or so here. First one, join my email list. Every Saturday, I write a newsletter called Founder Insights. That's the call to action for me. And every piece of content that I have, whether it's social media, podcast, YouTube, I want folks to join my email list because that's something I own and no one can take it away from me. Check me out on YouTube. Probably another really good one. Someone who listens to your podcast content is very likely to check you out on YouTube because you might have slightly different stuff, but video in some ways is a kind of higher fidelity medium. You might have slightly different content between your podcast or YouTube channel. A pretty good way for folks to get to know you better. Another one could be, hey, go to the website, check out the blog post associated with this episode. That's something we do a lot here at Castos, is we cover content, the same topic, on blog posts and on YouTube. Why? Because you're on YouTube. You like to watch YouTube videos. I do too. Sometimes I like to read blog posts. I don't want to make it to where you as the audience member, reader, consumer has to choose between blog post or YouTube video. I want you to say, hey, I can get it kind of wherever I want with Castos. So maybe it's check out my content in a different medium. Another one, if you don't have a clear brand objective, could be share this episode with someone who you think would like it too, right? Increase virality and word of mouth. Social sharing is by far the way most of us find out about a new podcast to listen to. And if your goal is just to increase listenership of your podcast, something like this is the approach I would go with. And the last one, and I joked about it at the beginning, is leave us a review in Apple Podcasts, or previously iTunes. And while I think that this one's a little weak, the concept of social proof is important, but there's a few things to consider. First, Apple Podcast is not the only show in town. About half of your podcast listeners are probably tuning into your show on Spotify. So what good does it do to encourage all of your listeners to go to Apple Podcasts when half of them are listening to you on Spotify? Probably not a good idea. The other thing is just leaving a review in Apple Podcast increases your social proof, but that's probably not the way you're going to acquire new listeners. So I would go back to, hey, share this episode with someone else who you think would enjoy it too, as a better call to action if your goal is to increase listenership. There's probably dozens and hundreds of other ways that you can create a perfect outro for your podcast, but my goal here is not to give you all the answers, but a framework for how to consider the things to think about when crafting the perfect outro for your podcast. So again, concise, easy, and aligned with your business objectives. I hope this is helpful. Drop a comment in below with how you crafted the perfect outro for your podcast and how it's helping you serve kind of the business objectives and growth goals that you have for your show. I'd love to hear about it. As always, if you're enjoying the channel, like, subscribe, smash the bell, and we'll see you next time.